Hello, my name is Robbie. On here, I'm Templar Knight. Every person who believes in God but does not attend a church has their story why. But it's said that whenever two or more gather in God's name, that He is there. So this is church. Welcome. I'm glad you're here. Tonight, we move into Lesson 5 of our Impossible series, talking about the miracles that God and Jesus did. Tonight we are going to talk about the resurrecting of the dead. Reading through the Bible, I decided that that is definitely a miracle that needs to be touched upon. So we're going to go through and we're going to talk about 3 times that Jesus raised someone from the dead and how that matters and why. Now, I'm going to jump straight into the scripture tonight because this series has been more or less storytelling. Not me coming up with silly little anecdotes and then throwing in a Bible verse here or there, trying to tie it in. This is history class. This is explaining what happened and how. So we're going to hop straight into the Bible. We're going to go to Mark chapter 5. Now I'm going to paraphrase the story because it's faster that way. In Mark chapter 5, Jesus and his disciples, they were out, they were reaching, they were preaching, they were teaching. They were working on Jesus' secret mission. And they would go around towns and basically just set up shop and teach. Jesus was a great philosopher, he was a great teacher. And the disciples would come with, and they would learn, and everyone would show up to learn and be a part of this. Now when he was there, a woman came up to him while he was teaching and says, "Jesus, my daughter is dying, and if you could put your hands on her, I know she would be healed." Jesus is like, "Yeah, you're right. I can lay hands on your daughter and heal her. Let's go." So Jesus and his crew, they pack up and they start walking. Now Jesus was the equivalent of a celebrity. Whenever he went to town, crowds gathered. So Jesus' disciples almost worked kind of like bodyguards, Secret Service dudes, kind of forming the circle saying, "Hey, everybody, make a path, people, make a path, clear a way." And they were going to go and visit this lady's house to cure her daughter. Well, on their way there was a woman in the crowd. And she believed that if she could just touch God's robe, reach out with one finger and touch Jesus' robe, that she would be healed, because for the last 12 years she's been bleeding. She's had open sores and there was nothing anyone could do to help her. And she believed that if she could reach out and touch Jesus, just even brush a finger along his robe, that she would be healed. And so as this crowd is moving, she's trying to jostle her way through and get closer and get closer. And sure enough, she gets ahead of the pack, and as they walk by, she's able to reach through. And she just barely brushes her finger along his robe. And instantly, this wave just takes her. This energy pours out, and she is healed. All of her wounds just close up, and the blood stops. And she's just relieved and loses all of the pain she's been going through. Now you would think that walking through this crowd, Jesus wouldn't have noticed. But he did. He felt that power, that energy as it left him to heal her. And he stops the group, says, Hey, what just happened here? Someone just reached out and touched me." And the disciples are like, "Well, yeah, God, we're pushing through a crowd of people. Everyone's trying to touch you. They all want your blessing." It's like, "No. Someone touched me and believed." And so this woman falls to her knees and she says, "Lord, I'm so sorry. It was me. But I believed that if I could just brush your robe, that I would be healed." And Jesus stopped. And he tells her, "Because of your faith, you were healed. Go and live your best life. Be blessed." Now I had to throw that in there because Jesus didn't directly heal her, and he let her know that. Her faith healed her. And he stopped to let her know. Because she believed it so much that just that slight contact would heal her, she was healed. Now that slowed down progress for a little bit. But once they had seen what had happened, and the woman went on to live a happy and blessed life free from pain, they carried on. And as they approached this house, there was a commotion. People were running around, scrambling, crying, wailing. The priests that were there, the doctors. Jesus, you came too late. This young girl is dead. I couldn't imagine the anguish in that mother's heart. When she left, her daughter was alive, sick, but breathing. And she went to get Jesus, to bring him back because she knew he could heal her. And so she gets him and he's coming back, but he's constantly stopping to talk with people. And when she returns home, her daughter's dead. And so they tell them, it's like, ma'am, you no longer need to bother Jesus. Your daughter's dead. There's nothing he can do. And Jesus looks at him and is like, no, this girl is not dead. And the doctors are there and like, yes, she is. We checked. She passed on maybe 10 minutes before you got here. And Jesus looks like, she's only sleeping. And he walks into the room where this girl is, laying on the bed. He reaches out and he takes her hand. And he says, you need to wake up. And she wakes up. She opens her eyes. She takes a deep breath. And she sits up. And Jesus looks around. Get this kid some food. She's hungry. And the girl gets up. And she's energetic. And she's excited. And she runs to her mother. This girl had been bedridden. She was sick. And now she's a kid again. Not only did Jesus heal this girl, he brought her back after she had died. That is an emotional roller coaster that I hope none of us ever have to deal with. If we carry on to another time, Luke chapter 7, Jesus and his disciples, they're wandering up to a town. They are preaching, they are teaching, they are reaching people. They are fulfilling the Lord's secret mission. And they're going to this town because there's this centurion there. Essentially, he's a military general. He's a good man. He's a great man. He has a lot of servants. He has a lot of people. He's done great stuff for this city. And one of his most valued servants is sick. And so as Jesus showing up, they send someone out and say, Lord, can you heal this man? Jesus is like, yeah, let's go. Take me to him. So they're going to head over to the centurion's house to go and heal this valued servant. Because part of what Jesus' secret mission was to show God's power, to show his love, to perform these miracles, to raise God awareness. And so they're heading to this house. And a messenger catches up with them. And it's a messenger from the centurion. And he says, Jesus, I have a message to you from my master. And he says that he is not worthy for you to come to his home. That he is ashamed. He does not deserve to be in your presence because he knows who you are. But as a military man, he understands what it means to give orders. As a military man, he tells people to stand up and they stand up. He tells people to do something, and it is done. And if Jesus is the Son of God, who he believes you to be, he knows that all you have to do is tell his servant to be better, and he will be healed. Now Jesus took a second. He's like, that is one of the biggest shows of faith that I have ever heard. Go home. Tell your master that his servant has been healed. And so it was. This guy knew and had such faith in Jesus that he knew Jesus didn't have to go there. He could just say the words and it would be done. Jesus was impressed by that. Said it was the best showing of faith he had seen. And so it was done. Well, now they traveled all the way to this town to perform miracles to help heal this guy. Dude's healed. They didn't even have to go and make a show of it. So they're getting ready to walk in, set up shop, have some classes. And they walk by a funeral. There are some men. They've got the pallbearers. They got the bier of the body. Got him up on their shoulders. And they are carrying this body out of town. Being followed by the young man's mother. And Jesus asks, he's like, what happened here? That widow just lost her only son. She's got no one. And Jesus was touched by this. And so he walks over to this funeral procession. He walks up to the pallbearers carrying this bier with the body wrapped up as they go out to the cemetery, the casket essentially. He walks up to them and he stops them. Looks at the mother. Again, having to deal with the loss of your only son, your last family member. And he reaches up to where this body is wrapped. Says, young man, get up. And he opens his eyes. And he pulls the death shrouds away from his face. And he sits up. And he is alive. And he runs to his mother. And she takes him in his arms. Jesus saw a need. That woman needed her son. And so Jesus broke the rules and he conquered death and he brought him back. We're going to move on to the most known story of Jesus bringing someone back from the dead. That is the story of Lazarus. Now I'm going to start at the beginning of this, because it's a very good place to start. So, Lazarus had two sisters, Martha and Mary. Now Jesus knew them because earlier he had been to Judea, and they had opened up their home for him so that he could teach, so that he could preach, and he could reach, so that he could fulfill his secret mission. And they opened up his home. Lazarus allowed Jesus and the disciples to stay there, to eat at his table, to eat his food. He hosted them for some time so that they could teach. And there was one thing I thought was really cool about it. Mary was allowed to be a part of it. Normally, women weren't a part of these teachings. Women were for housework, for raising the kids. It was the men's position to learn, to be educated, to make the decisions. Jesus wasn't having that. Mary wanted to learn, so she was able to sit at his feet and listen to everything the teacher had to say. Jesus knew these people. They were friends. They spent time together. After he did his time in Judea with them, he moved on. Because that was his goal. He had to travel. He had to go on his mission. He had to teach. And when he was away, a messenger caught up with him and said, Jesus, that man Lazarus, that man that you love, he is sick. He needs you. And Jesus said to the messengers, he is sick, but he won't die from this. It will be an occasion to show everyone God's glory. Now, instead of packing up and hightailing back to heal his friend, Jesus hung out there for another 2 days, carrying on with his classes, his teaches, his lessons. He carried on with what he was doing for 2 more days. And then he looks to his disciples and he says, well, guys, it's time to go back to Judea. And the disciples are like, hey, Jesus, you remember the last time we were there? They kind of tried to kill us. Because they did. The religious right was not having Jesus and his new teachings, because he was costing them money. And Jesus said to them, he's like, our friend Lazarus, he's sleeping. I have to go wake him up. And the disciples, again, they're kind of scared to go back. They're like, well, if he's just sleeping, he'll wake up, and he'll be well rested for it. Jesus just frustrated because they're questioning. He looks back, it's like, plain out, Lazarus is dead. And be thankful that I was not there for it. But because I wasn't there to heal him, you will get to witness something that will inspire faith. Enough said. His disciples, they look at each other like, we go back, they're probably going to try and kill us again, but, these are Jesus' disciples. They was his ride or die homies. If Jesus is going to go back and put his life at risk, they were going to go back too. So they left to go back to Judea. Now on the way they went, they found Martha, Lazarus' sister. She had opened her house to the Lord. She sent the messenger. She goes up and she cries out to him, if you had been there, my brother wouldn't be dead. But I know that even now, God would give you whatever you ask. And Jesus looks at her and says, your brother will rise again. Now Martha was at Jesus' teaching. She knows this story. She's like, yeah, I know. He had faith. He believed in you. And he will rise again on the day of resurrection. And Jesus spoke to her. He says, I am the resurrection and the life. Anyone who believes in me shall not perish, but has everlasting life. Martha, do you believe this? And she says, yes, Lord, I know you're the Messiah. I know you are the Son of God. She had been at his teachings. She had seen. She knew. So they continue their journey. And they catch up with Lazarus' other sister, Mary. She walks up to him in tears. Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not be dead. Jesus asks her, where have you laid him to rest? And with these two sisters, these women he knew he was friends with, who had just lost their brother. Jesus wept. Jesus cried with them. He mourned with them. And they went on to see his tomb, to go see the tomb where Lazarus was laying. They get there, and Jesus tells them to move the stone. Because back in the day, a tomb essentially was a deep cave that had a large boulder you could roll in front of it to protect the bodies from animals. And so he asked them to move the stone away. And they looked at him like, Jesus, he's been dead for 4 days. We put him in here 4 days ago. But they moved the stone. And they look into the darkness of the tunnel. And Jesus stops. And he looks up to his Father. He says, God, my Father, I thank you that you have always heard me. And I know that you will always hear me. So I say this for those who are standing here, so that they will all know, Lord, that you sent me here. And he looks into the tunnel, and he shouts out, Lazarus, come out. And he did. The body of a man that had been laid to rest 4 days ago took a breath, opened his eyes, and sat up, pulled the veil of death away, unwrapped the bandages, and walked out of his tomb. Because Jesus commanded it. I've read that story probably 4 or 5 times today. And there were so many things that just stuck out to me that Jesus knew. He knew what was going to happen the entire time. When the messenger came to him and said, Jesus, your good friend Lazarus is sick, Jesus told him he's not going to die from this. He's going to be okay. And you would think that would mean, well, no, Jesus, he died. You were wrong. No. Jesus knew. End game. Lazarus was gonna be okay. He would walk away from this. One of the things that really caught my attention, that just motivated me in all these times that we are talking about miracles, Jesus always says it's about faith. And if you go back and you read that, John chapter 11, one thing will stick out. When God is talking with Martha, when he meets up with her, she's not saying that, I hope you can do this. She's saying, I know you can do this. I know that God will give you what you ask. She just lost her brother. And she still believes that strong that she knows. There's not a, hey Jesus, do you think you could? Jesus, it'd be really awesome if. Jesus, I know that you can do this. The other part that gets me every time, John 11, verse 35. It is the shortest verse in the Bible. Jesus wept. I wonder what he was crying about. I don't think he was mourning the loss of his friend, because he knew what was going to happen. He knew what was going to happen from the moment Lazarus got sick. I think Jesus wept because of the pain that his friends were in. These two women that Jesus shared in their sorrow. The one other thing that always caught my attention, his conversation with Martha, when he says that he will rise again, and Martha falls back into Jesus' teachings. I know he will rise again on the day of the resurrection. Jesus taught her that because Jesus always says that I am the resurrection and the life, and that anyone who believes in me shall not perish, but have everlasting life. That is a very common phrase you will hear. The churches will talk about it constantly. If anyone's ever been to church, you've probably heard that at some point in time. That is a large part of what Jesus' secret mission was, to go and share this. I am the resurrection. Now that word, it means to bring back from the dead. Jesus is the resurrection. He is the gateway out of death. He is that bridge. Anyone who believes in me shall not perish. Anyone who believes in me will not die, but have everlasting life. That is some foreshadowing Jesus did. He is telling everyone right then and there, I will save you from death. I will give you eternal life if you believe in me. You know what he's talking about? He is talking about being rescued from hell and allowed access to heaven, where you can live on eternally if you believe in him. I knew this week was going to be a hard one because death sucks. We've all got people we've lost. And there's a man who can bring them back, who can reunite us with our loved ones. He says it right there. Anyone who believes in me won't die. They will have everlasting life. Anyone who believes. I know dealing with death is difficult. dealing with death is difficult. But to know that Jesus will save us, will save our loved ones, that He is preparing a place for us. If only we believe. That tells me one thing. That tells me that death doesn't mean goodbye. When someone dies, they're not lost to us. Because if we believe, death is just I'll see you later.
Do